After 2 years of marriage, she kept humiliating me, saying I was too weak to ever leave. But when I finally filed for divorce, she broke down crying and asked, "Why couldn't it just be me?" And I told her the truth. I'm 34, and for 2 years I was married to a woman who made me feel like nothing more than a placeholder in her life. From the very beginning, the tone of our relationship was different than what I had imagined marriage should be. She treated me as if my only purpose was to support her, financially, emotionally, and socially, while she went on living however she pleased. It wasn't a sudden change after marriage either. Looking back, there were warning signs I ignored during dating, but I convinced myself that things would improve once we were officially married. I thought commitment would bring stability, mutual respect, and a shared effort to build a life together. Instead, marriage seemed to inflate her sense of entitlement. She genuinely believed I was weak, not in the physical sense, but weak as a man, someone who would never push back, never leave, and never demand respect. She carried herself as if I had nowhere else to go, as if she could say or do anything, and I'd still stay by her side. In those early months, the humiliation started small. Snide comments in front of friends, little digs about how I wasn't enough, and subtle reminders that she thought she could do better than me. At first, I laughed them off, telling myself she was just joking or maybe stressed. But the jokes never stopped. They became sharper, cutting deeper, until they weren't jokes at all. Every time I tried to express how her words hurt me, she dismissed me. "You're too sensitive," she'd say, rolling her eyes. If I kept talking, she'd shut the conversation down completely with something like, "Stop whining, just deal with it." Along with the humiliation came the constant financial pressure. She always wanted more. New clothes, expensive dinners, trips, and luxuries that didn't match the life we could realistically sustain. And the expectation was clear. It was my job to make it happen. She wanted to live her life freely, without concern for limits, while I worked, budgeted, and stressed about how to keep up. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was the disregard. There was no gratitude, no appreciation, just demands followed by complaints if they weren't met quickly enough. She acted as though I owed her everything, as though simply being with her was some kind of privilege I should constantly be grateful for. For 2 years, this was my life. I tried to be patient, thinking maybe she'd eventually see the imbalance. Maybe she'd realize how much I was sacrificing to keep us afloat. But nothing changed. If anything, the disrespect grew stronger with time, as if every day she became more convinced that I was trapped, that I wouldn't dare leave, no matter how poorly I was treated. It was exhausting, emotionally and mentally. I'd wake up in the mornings already drained, already bracing myself for whatever criticism or demand was coming that day. I stopped recognizing myself in the mirror. The man I used to be, the one who laughed freely, who dreamed about the future, who believed marriage was about partnership, that man was fading. And yet I stayed. Because somewhere in me, I kept hoping for change. I told myself, this is just a phase. Marriage is hard. She'll calm down. She'll realize what she's doing. But the truth was hard to swallow. She wasn't going to change. Not because she couldn't, but because she didn't see a reason to. As long as I kept staying, as long as I kept giving, she thought her behavior was justified. By the end of that second year, I was worn down to my core. The humiliation, the demands, the lack of love or respect, it wasn't just damaging my marriage. It was damaging me. The truth hit me slowly, not in one dramatic moment, but in countless small ones that built up over time. Little by little, I realized my marriage wasn't about love, it was about control. She didn't see me as a partner. She saw me as a provider, a resource, and, in her mind, someone too afraid to walk away. She never cared about who I was as a person. My feelings didn't matter, my struggles didn't matter, my happiness didn't matter. What mattered was her lifestyle, her wants, her needs. If she wanted to go out with friends and spend money we didn't have, it was happening. If she wanted something expensive, I was expected to find a way to pay for it. And if I tried to talk about it, that's when things got ugly. She would raise her voice, insult me, or throw my words back at me like I was the problem. More often than not, the conversation ended with her snapping, "Shut up," like I was some nuisance she didn't have the patience to deal with. I can't describe how small that made me feel, how degrading it was to try to share my heart and be silenced like I didn't matter. At some point, I stopped talking altogether. I bottled everything up inside because it seemed easier than being dismissed or yelled at. But silence only made things worse. It made her even bolder in her demands, even harsher in her treatment. She thought my quietness was weakness, when in reality, it was exhaustion. I kept convincing myself that if I gave it more time, maybe things would shift. Maybe she'd realize that marriage takes respect and kindness, not just demands. But 2 years went by, and nothing changed. If anything, it grew worse. One night, I remember sitting alone in the living room after another fight. She had stormed off to bed, angry because I told her we couldn't afford some weekend getaway she wanted. I sat there in the silence, staring at the walls, and it finally clicked. This is my life now. If I don't do something, this is what the rest of my years will look like. That thought scared me more than divorce ever could. So, for the first time in 2 years, I started thinking about myself, about what I wanted, about whether I deserved more than being treated like a bank account in a punching bag. And the answer was clear. I did deserve more. I deserved respect. I deserved peace. I deserved love. That was the night I decided. I wasn't going to keep living like this. I wasn't going to sacrifice my happiness just to keep her comfortable. I made up my mind to file for divorce. I didn't announce it right away. I didn't argue. I didn't warn her. I simply started the process quietly, because I knew if I told her up front, she'd try to manipulate me into staying. She had always believed I would never have the courage to leave, and I didn't want to give her the chance to play on that. When she finally found out, the reaction was nothing like the confidence she had carried for 2 years. The moment she realized I was serious, everything flipped. The same woman who had spent years humiliating me, demanding money, and treating me like nothing, suddenly broke down. She cried. She begged. She asked why I was doing this. And for the first time in our marriage, she seemed afraid of losing the man she thought would never walk away. When the papers were finally in front of her, she didn't react the way I had expected. For 2 years, she had been so sure of herself, so confident that I'd never walk away, that I half expected her to laugh it off or treat it like an empty threat. But she didn't. Instead, she panicked. She cried in a way I had never seen before. She wasn't angry this time. She was desperate. She followed me around the house asking why, asking what she had done wrong, as if the last 2 years of constant humiliation and disregard had somehow slipped her mind. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. But then the tears shifted into something else, comparison. She had found out I was seeing someone new, a woman who treated me with kindness and respect, and it seemed to haunt her. She sat down across from me, face streaked with tears, and asked the question that still lingers in my mind. She's not younger than me, not skinnier than me, not prettier than me. Then why couldn't it just be me? Her voice cracked when she said it. It wasn't arrogance anymore. It was insecurity, regret, fear all tangled together. For once, she wasn't in control. I could have let the silence hang. I could have shrugged and walked away. But I felt she deserved an answer. Not because she had earned it, but because maybe she'd finally understand what she had thrown away. So I told her the truth, calmly, without anger. Because she's softer than you. She's quieter than you. She doesn't yell at me or call me an idiot. She doesn't tell me to shut up every time I try to speak. She listens. She's nice to me. She makes me feel like my happiness matters. She's not with me for money. She's with me for love. I watched her face change as I spoke. At first, she looked confused, like she didn't even understand what I meant. Then the confusion turned to disbelief, as though she couldn't comprehend that respect, peace, and kindness mattered more to me than appearance or status. I kept going, because for 2 years I had stayed silent, and this time I wanted her to hear everything. You never loved me. You loved what I could give you. And now you're shocked I'm walking away. But what did you expect? No one can live in constant chaos forever. We all crave peace, whether we admit it or not. Her eyes welled up again. She covered her face with her hands and cried harder than before. But this time, the crying wasn't a weapon. It wasn't manipulation. It was raw regret. For once, she was forced to face the truth she had avoided for years. Beauty, youth, money. None of it could replace the simple need for kindness in a relationship. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, clarity. I realized I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to argue. I didn't even need to hate her. The silence between us spoke louder than any fight ever had. She lowered her hands, eyes red, and whispered almost to herself. So it was never about looks, it was about peace. I didn't respond, because she already knew the answer. After I told her the truth, the room felt heavy. She sat there staring at me, wiping her face with the back of her hand like a child who had been scolded. For a long moment, neither of us said a word. The only sound was her unsteady breathing, broken by occasional sobs. Then, almost suddenly, her tone shifted again. I gave you everything, she said, her voice shaking but louder now. I was your wife. I stayed with you. How can you throw that away? I looked at her, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt no fear of her anger, no weight from her words. Just calm. You didn't give me everything, I said. You gave me conditions. You gave me demands. You gave me insults. But you never gave me respect. You never gave me love. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Instead, she pressed her palms against her forehead and muttered, I thought you'd never leave me. I thought you were stuck with me. That line hit me more than anything else. Not because it surprised me, but because it confirmed what I had always known deep down, that she never believed I had choices. She thought my loyalty was weakness. She mistook my patience for fear. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. That's the problem. You thought I was stuck. You thought no matter what you said, no matter how you treated me, I'd just stay. You thought I was too weak to ever walk away. But guess what? I finally realized my strength wasn't in staying. My strength was in leaving. Her tears returned, but this time, there was a different kind of desperation in her eyes. She reached across the table, as if touching me would change the course of things, but I pulled back slightly. Please, she whispered, her voice breaking. I can change. Just give me one more chance. It would have been so easy to believe her in that moment, to take the tears as proof, to convince myself that maybe she had finally understood. But deep inside, I knew better. Change born out of fear of losing something is rarely real. It fades the moment the fear does. It shouldn't take divorce papers for you to treat me like a person, I said quietly. If you cared, you would have shown me 2 years ago. Not now, when you're afraid of being alone. She froze at those words. The crying softened, replaced by silence. Her eyes darted around the room, like she was trying to find something, any excuse, any argument, to make me stay. But there was nothing left to say. In that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Relief. It was as though a weight I had carried for years was finally being set down. She whispered one last thing, so softly I almost didn't hear it. I never thought you'd leave me for peace. And that's when I knew she finally understood. For her, it had always been about appearances, about winning, about being the center of everything. But for me, it was simple. I just wanted peace. The days after I told her I was leaving were the hardest, not because I doubted my decision, but because of how relentless she became. She swung between emotions like a pendulum. One moment she was sobbing, the next she was angry, and then she'd slip into this quiet, almost pleading tone I had never heard from her before. She would follow me around the house, asking the same questions again and again. Why are you throwing away 2 years? Why does she deserve you more than I do? Don't you remember our good times? But when I thought about it, the good times she spoke of weren't really about us. They were about her, her trips, her dinners, her pictures with me standing beside her like a prop. When I remembered those moments, I didn't feel nostalgia. I felt drained. One night, she broke down completely. She sat on the edge of the bed with her face buried in her hands, crying so hard her whole body shook. Then she looked up at me with red, swollen eyes and said, I was wrong. I should have treated you better. I know that now. Just, please don't leave me. I'll change, I swear I'll change. It should have felt validating, hearing those words after years of disrespect. But instead, it just made me sad. Not for the marriage. We were already beyond saving. But for the fact that it took losing everything for her to even consider that I deserve kindness. I sat down across from her and said softly, you don't get it. Change isn't a performance you put on to keep someone from walking away. Change has to come from the heart. And the truth is, if you had ever really loved me, you wouldn't need to change now. It would have already been there. She shook her head furiously. That's not fair. You can't just give up. Marriage is supposed to be hard. People fight, people go through things. You're just leaving because you found someone else. Her words stung, not because they were true, but because of how quickly she dismissed everything I had endured. I wasn't leaving because of someone else. I was leaving because of her. No, I said firmly. I'm leaving because for 2 years, you never once treated me like a husband. You treated me like an ATM, like a servant, like a punching bag. I begged you to listen, to change, to just respect me. And you laughed, you insulted me. You told me to shut up. Don't rewrite history now that you're scared. Her face crumpled. She looked at me like she didn't even recognize the man sitting in front of her. For years, I had been quiet, patient, enduring. But now, she was seeing me with a clarity she couldn't control, and it terrified her. She reached out suddenly, grabbing my hand with both of hers. Her grip was tight, almost desperate. Please, don't do this to me. Don't leave me. I can be who you want me to be. I pulled my hand away slowly, shaking my head. That's the problem. I don't want you to be who I want you to be. I wanted you to just be a decent partner. Someone who cared. Someone who respected me. And you couldn't do that when it mattered. You can't fix 2 years of damage with a few weeks of begging. Her tears kept falling. But inside me, something had shifted permanently. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I felt strong. Strong because I finally understood that leaving her wasn't cruelty. It was survival. As the divorce process moved forward, her desperation only grew. Every day felt like a cycle. Crying, bargaining, anger, silence, repeat. She tried everything to get me to stay. There were nights when she'd corner me in the kitchen, clutching my arm with tears in her eyes, whispering promises of how different things would be if I just gave her one more chance. Other times, her tone would change completely. She'd lash out, calling me ungrateful, accusing me of abandoning her, as if the past 2 years hadn't been her slowly abandoning me. It was emotionally draining, but also eye-opening. For years, I had lived in the shadow of her moods, adjusting myself so I wouldn't set her off. Now, for the first time, I realized that no matter what she said or did, she couldn't control me anymore. One evening, she tried a different tactic. She came into the living room, sat across from me, and started reminiscing. She talked about our wedding day, the trips we had taken, the moments she called our best memories. She laughed through tears, trying to paint a picture of us as something worth saving. "We were happy once," she said softly. "Can't you remember that? Can't we get that back?" I looked at her and nodded. I do remember. But I also remember how quickly the happiness faded. I remember how those smiles and photos didn't match the silence at home. I remember how every fight ended with me feeling smaller, not closer to you. That's not happiness, it's survival. And I don't want to just survive anymore. Her face fell. She shook her head like she couldn't process what I was saying. "So that's it. You're just walking away from everything." I leaned back, exhaling slowly. "No, I'm walking away from nothing. Because what we had wasn't real. It wasn't a marriage. It was me giving and you taking. That's not a partnership. That's a prison. And I'm done living in it." For the first time, she didn't argue back. She just sat there, staring at me, the tears drying on her face. And in that silence, I saw something I had never seen before in her eyes: fear. Not fear of me, not fear of the divorce itself, but fear of what life would look like without someone she could control. The following days only reinforced my decision. She tried guilt, telling me I was destroying her, that no man would ever love her like I did. She tried blame, accusing me of being selfish, of choosing peace over loyalty. She even tried pity, telling me she'd have nothing without me, as if that would undo the years she spent making me feel like I was nothing. But none of it worked. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't looking at her words, I was looking at her actions. And her actions told me everything I needed to know. I realized something important during those days. Love doesn't beg for basic respect. Love doesn't demand loyalty while giving back humiliation. Love doesn't break you down just so it can build itself up. The more she tried to hold me, the freer I felt. Every tear, every plea, every angry outburst was proof that she finally knew what I had known all along. She had lost me, not because I was weak, but because I had found the strength she never thought I had. The night before I moved out, the house was strangely quiet. No shouting, no bargaining, no desperate pleas, just silence. It was almost eerie, considering the chaos that had filled those walls for 2 years. She sat at the dining table, staring blankly at a glass of water she hadn't touched. I walked past her with a box in my hands, and for once, she didn't say anything. She just watched me. Finally, as I placed the last box by the door, she spoke. Her voice was soft, almost broken. "So this is really it?" I turned toward her and nodded. "Yeah, it is." She looked down at her hands, fiddling with her fingers, and whispered, "I never thought it would end like this. I thought, no matter what, you'd never leave. I thought you needed me more than I needed you." That line summed up everything. She had spent 2 years convinced I was trapped, convinced my loyalty was weakness. But in the end, my strength was leaving. She started crying again, but not with the same intensity as before. These weren't manipulative tears, or even angry ones. They were the tears of someone finally realizing the cost of what they'd done. "She's not younger than me, not skinnier than me, not prettier than me," she whispered, almost to herself. "Then why couldn't it just be me?" I didn't answer right away. I walked closer, setting the last box down, and then spoke quietly. "Because you never listened. Because you never cared. Because you thought being married meant I would endure anything, no matter how cruel or careless. All I ever wanted was peace, kindness, and respect. And you gave me everything but that." The room went still after that. She didn't argue, didn't deny it, didn't lash out. She just cried silently, her shoulders shaking as the reality set in. For the first time since our marriage began, she had no words. And that silence told me everything. I felt no triumph in that moment, no satisfaction in seeing her broken. What I felt was relief. Relief that I had finally chosen myself. Relief that I was no longer bound to a life of humiliation and chaos. Relief that I was free. As I carried my boxes out the door, she stayed seated at the table, staring at nothing. She didn't chase me, didn't beg me to stop. It was as if she finally understood that it was over, that no amount of apologies or promises could erase the damage of the past 2 years. Walking out, I realized something important. She always believed men only cared about looks, youth, or status. But she never understood that what most of us truly want is peace. We want someone who listens, someone who respects us, someone who brings calm instead of chaos. In the end, I didn't leave because I wanted someone better. I left because I wanted someone who treated me like a human being, not a bank account. My ex didn't lose me because I was weak. She lost me because I finally found the strength to choose peace over misery. And now, I can finally breathe. I appreciate you watching till the end. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more content.